requirements, and after I'll finish the webinar, we will upload this webinar on air to make it available offline. But excuse me for forgetting, it will be available from this point on, so sorry about that. So market requirements, I just said that we want to develop using the simple desktop paradigm, and we want to deploy the application on top of cloud platforms and on top of dynamically scalable platforms. We want to be able to serve large number of concurrent users at the same time for large applications, and we want to support full redundancy, and this means that if someone actually hits a certain server, then it can this user can can be served by other users as well without logging off or on and things like that. And we would like to accomplish this task, so we need some tools from I would say the platform or the infrastructure to help us to do that. So we need Visual WebGui core serialization support, and this is essential. So if Visual WebGui is not serializable, and we'll talk about serializability in a few minutes, then we can't even accomplish that. So we need Visual WebGui to be serializable, and then we need our application to be serializable as well. So we need a tool to get a good view on the serialization status, and this means that we need to have some sort of the ability to explore the current status and where are the problematic spots within our application. So the other thing we need is tools to perform batch serialization fixes, and this is something that concerns productivity, because if we'll have to, for example, after the fact, we have a very large application and we would like to make it serializable, if we have some common tasks that we have to do repeatedly again and again, this tool that we are now suggesting will actually take care of that at once. You will be able to mark all the handling of grouped issues and make it a batch to fix those issues. So scalability options in our focus today is the part where I actually explore the scalability options out there, and we'll concentrate today on scalability in terms of serializability, and it will become clear for those of you that it's not yet clear in a few minutes, in a few slides I would say. So we have the IP static load balancing, in which what happens is we have a load balancer and we kind of split the world into divisions. For each division, we kind of dedicate a server, and those IP or IP range, they get served by a certain server. So that's a very static load balancing, and obviously you can, I believe that you can think of why it is not that best, because first of all, we don't have the ability to move between servers. Even if we log off and log on, we'll never get another server. This means that if, for example, in this picture, Visual WebGui 1, Visual WebGui Server 1 kind of crashes or anything like that, then those IPs 138.0.0.5 to 138.0.0.204 will not be served. We'll have to change the load balancer device configuration in order to move those users to other server. This is obviously not what we're talking about, but it is possible. You can achieve Visual WebGui servers to be load balanced in an IP static load balancing, and that's no trick, because it's a very simple thing to do with any stateful or stateless application. The other dynamic session, I would say, based load balancing type is the ability to, people call it session sticky. That's the right term. Session sticky load balancing. This means that from the point that machine that is marked by, that is labeled by A in this drawing here, this machine that called A actually accesses the load balancer. The load balancer attached this A machine with Visual WebGui Server 1, and from this point on, on until the server will log off and relog on. The load balancer sticks to this route from A to server 1. So this means that it's a bit more dynamic, and if I log off the application, I can receive another server. The load balancer will connect me to another server, but I'll have to log off. And then again, the load balancing is not that dynamic, because if people logged on in a certain manner and then logged off, we will have an unbalanced picture or state at many given times. So this is a bit more dynamic, but not this dynamic. We would like to have this picture. We would like to have, this is not static. I'm sorry for the title. It's the fully dynamic. The fully dynamic ability. I'm going to change it right now. It's the fully dynamic load balancing, which enables us to get served by any server on a per call basis. This means that if client A goes to the IP of the load balancer device, then the load balancer can give attach this specific call to server number 1 or 2 or 3, and the next call can be routed to another server, to a different server. So this means that we have full redundancy, because if on the second call I will not be able to attach server number 1, the load balancer will be able to attach me to another server, and this will enable me to continue working from the point that I've stopped without interference. And this can be achieved in two possible ways. One is having a full stateless application, and this means that I can give you an example to something that can be full stateless. Full stateless means that either the client contains all the state, and then when it turns back to the server, it brings the entire state, and the server can construct the entire state from this request. Or it's a fully stateless service, for example, web service, that on each call actually identifies us and then performs a certain action and returns the reply to us, or returns the answer of our request to us, our response. And this is possible when it's full stateless. And the other way it's possible is how we implement it within Visual WebGui, because Visual WebGui is stateful. And the statefulness of Visual WebGui actually brings many benefits, starting from the ability to go back to the server with a certain event and know that all the controls that are surrounding us they do exist, and I can inspect them, and I can know what's the current state. I can access any control and any data object that is within the state, and knowing that I can do so is very helpful for the programmer in a way that, if we compare it to ASP.NET or to stateful or partially stateless applications, we will probably have to construct the environment on many calls that we go back to the server, because many calls will end at the point that we will say to ourselves, okay, we don't have what we need, we'll have to construct all the objects again and again in order to serve this request. So Visual WebGui actually brings this ability. One derived benefit of this is that Visual WebGui serves requests immediately, because constructing the environment takes time, and constructing object, allocating memory is the most expensive time for the CPU. And if you look at statistics, if you take a look at statistics of what a normal JSP or ASP.NET or web server is doing, stateless web server is doing, most of the time it's constructing and destructing objects. So it's very crucial for the ability to serve immediately and be able to raise the service level under stress. So being stateful is very meaningful in this respect. So how do we do it with Visual WebGui? So we have the state server, and then let's say the state server is very strong. Then those web or cloud servers can attach to this state server and keep the state in a central place location. It can be a database or other state servers. There are a few solutions out there that you can use, but mostly it's done using database. So you can use database cluster if it's a very large application serving many users. And when I have this central state, I can have kind of stateless web servers. I can have a web farm with tens and hundreds and unlimited number of web servers attaching to the same state server. And of course that if I have many servers, I'll have to have some strong state server, and it will probably be a cluster server, but for our matter it will not change the fact that we will have a state located in a central place, and we can attach to this state and have stateless, or I would say external state web servers, as many as we want. So we have the load balancer, and we do exactly what we want to do. We want A to be able to attach to server 1, and then when A is loaded, we can go to server 2, and server 2 requests the state from the server and serves the user accordingly from the point that this user stopped on the previous call. So we have full redundancy using a state server and still being able to maintain the power of statefulness. So, but having this in mind, we can think of a few problems that we might have using this model. So I get you are muted in this session, but I guess that some of you might think that having the entire state on a state server can cause latency, because web server actually attaches the server and requests the state should go back and forth to and from the server on each call. And that is true, but we've done some extraordinary optimizations within Visual WebGui Core to support this ability very good in a way that the penalty for having a state server on very large applications shouldn't be larger than 15 milliseconds per call. And this is possible due to the fact that Visual WebGui created a very optimized ability of being serialized to the database. And what I mean by serialized is that since I would like to save the state into a database, I need to transfer it through a network, and I have to transfer the entire thing to the database or the state server. So I'll have to serialize it. Serialize it means create a text string out of it, or a binary format out of it that can be kept within a database. So this serialization process is also something that we should think of. If this serialization process is too expensive, we'll have latency. So we would like to have the most efficient serializability capability, and this depends on the way we implement our application, and we're going to discuss this today, and the ability of Visual WebGui to minimize the amount of memory that is kept for a single state. And Visual WebGui did that, or Gizmox did that on Visual WebGui within 6.4. So we have Visual WebGui highly optimized, and if you guys will create highly optimized applications, you will not exceed 15 milliseconds penalty for each call for having unlimited number of web servers or cloud servers deployed behind a load balancer or Fabric or any other load balancing solution. So, what is actually the Visual WebGui solution? Visual WebGui serialization mode is the ability to enable full support for core Visual WebGui optimized serialization. And this means that the entire set of objects that are represented by Visual WebGui, or that are actually in the Visual WebGui core library, they are all optimized and serializable. I must say that in RCO, we will not have the data grid view and the property grid serialization state yet, but RC1 will contain a data grid view and property grid support. So, except for those two, we have support for all the controls and all the concepts, for example, data binding and all of those. And we did some massive work to optimize this into something that will eventually let you guys create highly scalable applications. And the second thing we've created in order to assist you to create a scalable application is the Serialization Explorer. And within this Serialization Explorer, we've created the ability to view the project and to drill down within the project and understand what's the current serialization status of the project. And another thing we've created is the automation of this serialization fixes issue, so we don't have to go one by one and fix things if we have already got a project that we would like to make serializable. I would like to state, though, that we highly recommend, not just prefer, that you will think of the serialization ability beforehand. So before you create the application, think of it, if you want this application to be serializable, to be fully scalable, and you want the state to be serialized into database, then you would probably want to plan the application architecture, I would say, and object model and behavior according to the best practices of serialization, which we're going to discuss today. So the best practice would be plan your scalability before, because if you go ahead and take an existing project after the fact and you try to make it serializable, you will probably make some compromises because you haven't considered that when you started the project. So it's highly recommended to start over by thinking, okay, now we would like to have this next application serializable, and not, okay, let's leave it to the end of the project and then make it serializable. That's not a great idea. So what are the factors and the implementations that we will have to consider while doing this move of making an application serializable? Actually, the first thing is a very technical thing. Visual WebGui is based on the configuration of the ASP.NET Session State Server configuration. So there's a nice article here. I'll show it to you. And this article, I can send it over through the GoToMeeting as well. This link. Okay. Send you all through the chat. This is the article URL, and this article actually explains how to install the ASP.NET State Server on a SQL. So on a SQL server. So I just did that on this machine that I'm using right now, and we've performed it many times before, and that's a very neat process. It's a short process that creates the state server on top of SQL 2005, 2008, you name it. So this is one. The other thing we will have, the next thing we will have to actually figure out how we're going to support UI serialization. And this is actually something that Visual WebGui supports from within. So you will not have to do much, and even if you will have to do, and you will have to do some minor things, those are mostly automatic things. You will not have to consider this. So except for the data grid view and the property grid that are currently not finished, you will not have to consider any changes in the UI model in order to have your application serializable. The next thing we will need to do is to handle large objects. And this is a very important thing, because if we have large objects, those should be serialized, and serialized objects, they take time, as we said, as I mentioned before, they take time to serialize. They actually should serialize, and then they should be sent to the server and kept within the database. So even though we have great communications between two servers, and we have very strong machines, and the database is a cluster server, we will still need to minimize the amount of data that is sent to the server. So bear in mind that any object that you keep on top of the model that is holding data or anything that you are saving, just consider before you use this object, consider if you need it or not. So avoid using large objects. But if you must use large objects, or even medium-sized objects, you will need to consider restorable object methodology, because you can go brute force and say, okay, any of the data objects that I keep right now, I'm going to make them serializable, but you will suffer from a large set of data that is kept on the database on each call, and this is not good, and it's not considered an optimized application. So just a quick pause I'll do to explain the ability of serialization will probably be the best way for you guys to understand it through. We would like to turn our application into a partially stateless application. And what I mean by that is that we would like to have certain amount of objects that are very expensive in transferring to the database to something that restores itself rather than saves itself. So we will go back in a few steps and think of our application as partially stateful. Visual WebGui UI will behave fully stateful, even though within Visual WebGui we already did that. We've already done that, and we considered which object should be restorable object and which should not be. But you should continue this line of thinking when you create your objects on top of Visual WebGui. And then again, we have the non-serializable classes that we'll have to handle in some way, and that's a very simple way, but we'll have to discuss that. And one other practice I would like to mention is specifically large list of data. Those can be handled in a very nice manner. That is, by the way, a best practice for non-serializable application as well. So if I consider restorable object methodology, if I would use it on non-serializable application, I probably would not use it, because it doesn't give me any benefit with non-serializable applications. But using the methodology of large list of data is something that we would like to have on a non-serializable application as well. So let's simply directly dive into a demo that will show the entire thing. I will show you an application. In this demo, I will take an application that you might bump into a known application of Visual WebGui. It's a kind of data-centric application that we ported from WinForms to Visual WebGui. And I took this application because it contains a few things there. It contains lists, it contains data, SQL access to SQL database, and stuff like that. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go straight ahead and open the project or solution. Okay, so I'm using Visual Studio 2008, and I'm opening this application, and before I start, just close this, and before I start, just run it so you can feel what application I'm talking about. As I said, you might have bumped into this application before because it's a sample Visual WebGui that we have even online that demonstrates application that actually was ported as is from WinForms, but that's not our focus today, and we will not discuss this. So we have this application, data-centric application, with kind of dialogues, and we have a filter here. I can go ahead and click BE, and okay, here I go. I have those two, and it's fully functional. I don't know if it's fully functional. Probably have some bugs here as well, but it explains the way to port an application, but it's a data-centric application, and that's what's important. And we'd like to make this application serializable. So how do we start? How do we actually go ahead and understand what's the current state of the application and what needs to be done in order to make this application scalable or serializable, I would say. So I go to View, and I go to Other Windows, and we have the Serialization Explorer. So I open this Serialization Explorer, and I have to have the application built before, and I have to refresh the view in order to load the data into this view. And what I have here is, for each namespace, I have its contents. And as you can see, this application is not in good shape. We have many, many errors here, but it doesn't mean that we have a lot of work to get done here, because it can be the situation that we have a few common things that we have to solve in order to make this application scalable, and not just many different things that we have to do. So don't be afraid of this view, or don't hesitate to go deeper into this view and understand better what are the issues that we actually have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open Form 1 and I'm going to explore a few things here. So we have this system component model, and we have this extended list view that is not serializable, and I can go deep inside it and I can understand that I have still the iContainer component model. And this thing here is, just let me show you, this thing that is common to many of those classes is a designer component. So we actually don't need it at runtime. So the Serialization Explorer, you will see in a minute, will tell us that this is not required. So we can make it non-serialized, and we solve the problem. Because if the application will try to serialize having this here, then it will not be serialized. Simple as that. But so we have a few common things, and I can further explore, and I can understand, and go ahead and understand that I have some data object that is called mobj random data. That is, it's not a control, that is not serializable. And one very important thing I have here is, let me go to Form 1, and I don't need members, but I can see that this thing is not marked as serializable. And I can go ahead and explore more and more, but I can have this view here. If I click on this Fix Current Errors List screen, so this will show me the entire list of errors that I have, and some of them are unfixable, okay? And some of them will be fixed automatically if I click that I want them to be fixed automatically. And just 1 second, just get rid of this for a second. Okay, and we have some others here, and I can explore the entire set of errors that I have here. And I have some warnings that I'm currently not looking at, because first I have to solve the errors. So let's see. We have here Advanced View, in which we're going to filter unfixable issues, which this actually this catalog or this explorer cannot help me fix automatically. And what other things I would like to filter out of here is the non-UI related tasks. And I'm doing this because, first of all, I would like my UI to be serializable. Okay? And then I'm going to look at my set of data objects and set of business objects that I keep on top of my model and consider each one's handling. So I'm going to evaluate this object and understand where I use it, how many times I use it, and then decide whether I want this object to be a restorable object. Do I have a choice? Maybe I don't have a choice, so I have to make it a serializable object just as is, and stuff like that. So I would like to remove those non-UI related issues or tasks. And what I have here are, a few. I have some forms and data and one user control that is not marked as serializable. Type Gizmox WebGui sample application form 1 will be added a serializable attribute. So I have two of those, and I have those iContainer and I have a few others that will be added the serializable attribute, and I have those iContainer issues which will solve many other issues because extended list view is contained in other objects. So solving those will solve many other errors. And let's just go ahead and solve those errors first. And by just clicking OK here, I'm going to solve the entire thing. The Serialization Explorer is not 100% user-friendly right now, so I will need to refresh the view in order to have this refreshed and to see what it's done. And I'm going to re-click here on the things I need to fix, and okay, I haven't selected the namespace. Okay, sorry for that. Do it again. Give it a second here. Okay, and what we have here are, we have the unfixable issues, which we're going to discuss in a few seconds, and we have the okay, that's not good. One second, give it time to refresh. Okay, so we have the unfixable issues, and we have those two that were. No, that's not. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Just have to close this. Sorry for that. In order for the changes to actually be visible, or in order to view the changes that I did within the Serialization Explorer, I must build the application. So this was a good thing that I saw this, because I have to emphasize that in order to browse the application serialization-wise, I have to rebuild the application at each round. So as you can see, I have this serializable attribute here, and I'll probably have it on any other form. It should be within the here. So I have serializable on every form, and then what I need to do is to reopen the other windows, reopen the Serialization Explorer, and refresh. So now I'm going to go ahead and open this. Now it's built, because we go on. We traverse the IL code. We don't traverse the code, the actual code. So we have here the issues that we had, and we have the unfixable issues, and something went wrong here. Sorry for that. Okay, let's close it. I think I have made a mistake that I did not build it before, so I'm going to reopen it. That's an issue that it's already in there, and just have to fix it, and I'm sorry for that, but I would like to show you the real status, so I'm reopen it in it now. Where is it? Okay, so I'm in here. Just build it and go to View, again, Other Windows. This is something that we know about already. So let's load this. Okay, choose the namespace and go ahead and have this. Okay, so we're going to do it all over again. Going to remove those two. We're going to say, okay, now I want those 62 selected to be fixed. Then build and refresh. That's the right order. And now hopefully I can see, okay, now it's the right state. So that's what I was hoping to see before, and probably because I haven't built it, I lost the changes that the Serialization Explorer has done. So I have here the unfixable issues, and I have two. In a second they'll show. I have two business objects that actually those are the same one. Two issues with the business object that I'm using. So if I remove that, I have nothing. So this state is actually the state where the UI issues were fixed. And now we're going to go ahead and look at the non-UI related tasks. Okay, so one second. Okay, the non-UI related tasks are those. I can see the filter is not that great here, and I had it correct today, but I don't know what happened. So I have those two. Those are business objects that I have to solve. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to understand what can be done here. So the brute force would be to go ahead and add serializable attribute to it. But will it be correct? Let's go ahead and understand why I think that this will not be correct. I'm going to go ahead and explore this member, this random data, and understand what it does. So within this random data, I have a form, and I have a global member of this form, or a member of this form, that is called mobj random data, of type random data. If I go ahead and explore the type, then what I have here is random that can be initialized at any time, and some methods. I don't have a lot of state here. So having said that, and I even have a static member here, or some static methods here, that by all means do not need states, because they are static, they are stateless by definition. So I take a look at this random data, and I would like to say, okay, I don't really need this random data to be serialized, and I would like to have this non-serialized. But by doing this, when I use the random data, it will not be initialized. And why is that? Because when I go ahead and run the constructor of form 1, I will create a new random data, and then I'll go to the database and retrieve, on the second call, I'll retrieve the state, and the random data will not be initialized because I said that I don't want it to go back to the server and get serialized. So it will be null, and that's not good for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and understand within the form what are the references that are using this random data. Okay, I'm going to see that except for making new, I'm going to use it as a random generator. Okay, that's the whole issue of this random data thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract or encapsulate a property that retrieves the random data. Okay, and I'm going to do that in order to make sure that when we get the random data, it's recreated. So I'm going to ask if mobj random data equals null, then what I would like to do is mobj, or sorry, I'd like to mobj random data equals new random data, and that's it. I'd like to return this thing, and now I have this random data protection or insurance. And what I ensure here is that when people access this random data, they will either have null and recreated random data, or if it's the second call within the same request, it will already be there. So I'll be able to attach it without having to recreate it. And this concept is the most simple concept of restorable objects. Restorable object is an object that we would not want to be serialized because we don't need it serialized. And remember, this operation of serializing objects that we don't really need to be serialized to get serialized is expensive because it goes to the database, it saves there, and it's not a good case. So what we're doing here is we ensure that this thing will be restored when we need it, when we access it, and when we don't access it, we're not accessing this random data, it will not be restored because I will not go into here. The other thing I have to do is just go ahead and explore the locations of this random data just by searching again all the references and just changing from mobj random data to this thing that actually accesses directly, or actually not directly, through the property. So accessing random data will go to this property, and this property will ensure that this random data exists, and then we're all fine. So for example, if we go to paint graph, we will not need this random data, or if we process the request of the handler, we will not need it, and so on and on. We need it only in the places where this random data is used. So we do not serialize this object, and we make sure that it's restored when we need it. That's the case here. Just make sure I'm building it. So, okay, succeeded, and I'm going to go ahead and refresh it. And going to the forum, I will not find this. I will not find this error here. I have this random data thing marked as okay. I'm fine with serialization, and that was the concept of ensuring a restorable object, restoring and making sure that those objects are not kept in the database. But I could have decided that I have some state there, and I do want to keep the state in the database, and then I would go member by member of this random data class or any other class that I want to consider this thing for, and for each one I will ask myself, do I really need this, or can I restore it and it will take the same time? So this is a very important thing to remember, to bear in mind. So we have here a few issues that are actually, if we drill down to those, we will notice that they all concentrate on one thing. They all have SQL connection, and SQL connection is a non-restorable. Okay, here's the message. Is not serializable. It can't be serialized because it's a Microsoft connection and it's an object, and we cannot keep it in the database as is. But even worse than having this member not serializable, we can see here that it's a bad practice as well, because we don't want to open connection and keep it globally on the class, and then maintain the connection all the time when the things happen here on the screen. So it's a bad practice anyway. We would like to see here some connection pooling, and this means that I would like to recreate this connection again and again, and use maybe the using statement in order to create a very rapid or convenient connection pooling, if you know this method of creating connection pooling. But I would like to keep only string of connection. Okay? So if I'm keeping a string of connection here, then I would not need to have issues with serialization, because string is a very serializable object and it's limited, it's nothing large, and we don't have to serialize it because string is already serialized. So because it's a serialized primitive or object type, and so I don't need to do anything but replace this to string. But it will not work actually, because we don't have the connection here. We have property here that returns the connection, and what we really need here is to have this connection as string, and we don't need this thing, and just need this connection. By the way, it's a bad practice to keep connection string within the code, but you know, it's sample application and it's nothing very serious, but don't do it. All I need to do here is to return this thing to the caller, and you know what? I can do str. I don't need it actually. I don't need it actually. So I don't need the member even. So I don't need the setter here to be more exact. But I'm gonna do it anyway, just for you to understand what I'm doing here. So I have this connection, and now I should go over the project and fix all the places where this connection is referred to as an object. So I have the SQL command, and it uses the connection. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to use the using statement to say SQL connection, obj connection equals new SQL connection, and I'm going to use the connection property, which is string, to initialize this thing here, and so here I go. I just have to return this thing, and when I finish right here, then I actually close it automatically using the using statement. So still have some issues with this. Yeah, sure. I have to replace this with this, and connection close with obj connection close and open, because I have two statements that are running, and I need to close before I redo anything with this connection. So we have a few others like this, and we'll go over them. I don't think I'm going to go step by step on those all, because I have only a few minutes and I don't want to waste my time on something we already did. But I just want to show you one thing before I show you something that is already working, using the same thing that I did here, just the same process exactly. So what I will require here is that this load table thing will return a reader, and the practice here is to receive the connection externally, SQL connection, obj connection, so I can actually call it connection, and it will be immediately valid here. And when I recompile this, probably when I call this thing, it will not be valid. So here I can do the using trick, and then SQL connection obj SQL connection equals new SQL connection, and I'm going to use the connection property and surround this. So, and I'm going to go ahead and build, and I have a few errors here, and I have to resolve those two, and they all concern the same thing. I have the load table here. I have to surround this with using, oh, that's the same thing here. I haven't done this. SQL connection. Okay, so here I go. This goes. This error goes. So I can go ahead one by one and eliminate those, and just to save time, I did it all. I already prepared a copy of this earlier today that actually does it. I'm going to close this, and I assure you that all I did here was to do this thing on and on until I finished the errors, and that's it. And so when I open the project after I did this, first thing I'm going to show you is the Serialization Explorer. I'm going to build it just to make sure. I know it's built, but I'm going to make sure. And I'm going to go ahead and go to View, Other Windows, Serialization Explorer, and refresh. And so I have this project. And as you can see, I see only warnings here. There are no errors. And when I go in, you can see that we have the connection here somewhere. Should have the connection here somewhere. But it's not. It's a string, and it's fully serializable. So it should be here somewhere. And I'm not sure that it's shown here because it's not. It's a value object, and we don't need to even test if it's serializable or not. And I have a few warnings here. So do I have to be concerned of those warnings or not? So before I answer this, I have a question here. I see complicated, all this. Someone asked, Alejandro Vanchez, I hope I pronounced correctly, is asking, I see complicated all this. This has to be done for a scalable app. What happens if we already have an app and we want to use web farm and have to do it? Can it be done automatically? Oh, so obviously there are a few ways to do it, and as I told you before, one way is to have it session sticky. So you can have and that's good. You know that there are organizations that are working session sticky. The only bad thing, or the two bad things that you have with session sticky, is that session sticky is not fully dynamic, and the other thing is that session sticky does not support redundancy, because if I logged in and I use the certain server, and when it crashes, I can't go ahead and use it again because it crashes, and I can't use another server because it was sticky to this server, and the state was kept on this server alone. So you can't possibly reach a scalable application, but it will not be dynamically scalable application. So what I mean by I see that's right. Okay, so what I mean by that is that scalable application is not it's not something that you can say, okay, I'm going to do something automatic to make it scalable. There are some heavy or architectural considerations here. As you saw, I can go brute force and I can create all the things. I can force all the objects to be serializable. I can put non-serialized on any non-serializable property and create those later when I need those. But this will create an application that might take a long time to serialize and deserialize. So it's not undoable. It's not something that you can't do. You can do it, but it will not be the best. It will not be optimized. You will suffer. You might suffer. I'm not saying that you will suffer, but you might suffer from latency because you have to save a lot of data and restore a lot of data. And what I'm guiding you today towards is the ability to take an application or to, plan an application. I recommended an application to be planned this way. But if you take an application, and here I took an application that had nothing to do with serialization before, and I went through the issues and I solved them one by one, and on each issue, on each group of issues, family of issues, I reconsidered whether I want them to be serialized or restored, or maybe I don't need them at all. Maybe they do restore automatically already, and maybe they are design time only, so I have those design time components that I might have in external component as well. But I need to do some work to optimize it, not just to make it serializable. Serializability is not the issue here. I can make things serializable quite fast and very automatic, but it will not serve the purpose of creating a highly optimized serializable application, because having a state is something that means that you need to optimize it, because if you don't optimize it, you will suffer latency. So I hope I was clear. Yeah. So I'm just letting you know that Alejandro is agreeing with me, agrees with me. Okay. So we're fine. We're fine. We have this optimization. We still have those warnings here. And what are those warnings? Let's go ahead and find out. Okay, so we have this image list, and it goes for the image list and some tag objects. And what Visual WebGui Serialization Explorer says to me here is system.ob. Okay, we have an image list. An image list contains an array list, and that is by mimicking the WinForms APIs. So we have this array list, and the array list contains system object array, and system object array is nothing. It is something that Visual WebGui can determine if it will or will not be serializable. But since we know that image list contains a set of resource handlers or image resource handlers, we know that it will be serializable. So we don't have to worry about this. Same goes for the tag. I know that in this application I did not use the tag to maintain objects that are not serializable or that are heavy. I always tend to keep very simple objects, if not even strings and IDs within the tag. And if I know that I kept this thing true, I will not need to do anything special to support this. Okay. So we have an application that is hopefully compiling, and yeah, it compiles, and we now would like to run it on a state server. So I just gave you the URL for the state server and all that, but I'm just going to show you that within my web config, I just recreated this so I can show you. The standard state of this web config section session state is this one. It's in process, this means, and nothing to mention about this because it's not a state server, it's just proxies to something that I might use. And timeout 20 minutes, this means that the session is kept for 20 minutes. But when I go ahead and describe my state server, in this example, it's an SQL server that is actually located on this laptop. And I use integrated security, and I already prepared it using those commands. So I have a state server, and I have this configuration here. And when I run it, the state will not be kept in process, but on server, on database. So when I run it, this thing will go straight to the state server. So I'm going to run it, just show you that it runs, and it runs pretty well as well. And that is because I maintained the rules and the best practices of making this thing happen in an optimized manner. So I have my application, I can go ahead and open dialogues, and I can go ahead and use the filter, and it's all functional. Okay, so here's the thing. I know that I could have create something better with it, and since I was actually taking an application that was already there and I just wanted to make it serializable, I did my best to optimize it. But I really don't know if I have large objects there or if I have large data sets that are suffering from they are extremely large. Maybe when I page, it's using internal paging. And when it's using internal paging, this means that a data set is kept on the session. And if it's kept on the session, it's serialized back and forth on each call. And that's a very bad thing to do. So I will answer questions in a few seconds. Okay, so I will answer all the questions when we finish this. I just want to make another point here, and that is the large lists that I need to handle. If I have a large list, the best way to go about it on a serialized application or even a non-serialized application is to have a database-based paging. So I catch the events of next, and I go ahead all the way to the database and bring a data reader and read the data directly to the list view, and not having to keep it for a single minute even on the state. Because if I keep it on the state, it will be forced to go back to the database and save. And even if I don't serialize an application, if I don't want to have this feature of serializability and support web fonts, then it's not recommendable. It's not recommended because I will have the entire data set on the session, within the session, and it's a large data set. So this is something that you should remember, that it's always preferred to we should always prefer to go back all the way to the database and bring the next page rather than have a data set of data and use the internal paging that is good for demos or small application or things that are very light. I know that I have 2 or 3 pages, of 20 items, and I don't want to go back to the database. But if I know that I have a lot of data, then please go ahead and implement, invest a few more hours in this, and implement all the way to database paging. And it's worth it. I assure you, it's worth it. So that's another point I wanted to make. So getting back to the demonstration, and I want to give you time for questions, and I already have a question here. Christoph is asking, where is it? Questions. Where is it? Okay, don't see it. It was not viewable. Okay, so I see the questions, and I have Christoph here asking, do you recommend SQL Server for external state? And if so, how do you cope with SQL being unavailable? Even failover will take about 20 seconds. Do you do any tests with other external redundant servers like Scalable, State Server, and so? So, Visual WebGui is based on the ASP.NET methodology of using State Server. So you can go ahead, and I can assure you, and if something goes wrong, we'll fix it directly because it's something that should work. You can use any State Server that ASP.NET is supported on. So you can use Scale-out. I know that it's if I'm not mistaken, you know what? I should check it, but I'm 99% convinced that Scale-out should work for ASP.NET, so it should work with Visual WebGui. We did not invent the methodology of doing it, but we highly optimized the algorithms of the serialization. We minimized to minimum the amount of memory that we have to serialize, and so it should work fast as well. And we do recommend SQL Server, and we know that failover takes time. But if you consider cluster server, a cluster server with full redundancy between the servers and not just failover, should be able to serve very rapidly the users. But just remember that if you don't have SQL and you probably have the data within the SQL, then the entire application is not that good, because you can't use it even, because you use this database for data as well. So if you go ahead and click a button, let's say we did have some offline state or something like that, or we moved automatically to in process or something like that, but then you wouldn't have a server, so you it seems like you can't work anyway. So that's why we're not concerned with the availability of database servers, because those technologies should deliver, if you know what I mean. So yeah, a state server, we have to count on the state server to be stable, but what we do count on those type of servers to be stable and to actually deliver the ability to the availability, I would say. I hope this answers your question, and let me just go back for a second to my slides here and conclude the session, and then give you more time for questions. So, creating a completely scalable application with Visual WebGui is a task, and I know that it concerns some, or it involves some complexities, and those complexities are because we didn't want to brute force the application to become serializable, because this wouldn't be correct, and we would like to optimize it. We already discussed this before, and someone asked that, so I'm not drilling down into it. But except from this, part of some complexity that we need to solve when we're, especially when we are considering after-the-fact applications, or applications that I already have that I need to make scalable. If it's a large application, it can be a task. It takes, between 1 week to even a few months, because I might have used some concepts that are not good and not optimized for serializability, and that is why I bolded this thing here that says it is highly recommended to plan serializability from the day the project starts. So if we plan it in advance, then it's great. If we have luck and our application is planned correctly, even though we haven't planned it and we have to do some minor fixes, then that's great. But planning it in advance is the best way to cope with it. And Visual WebGui backs this process up with a wide core optimization that I told you about, that essentially minimizes the memory, the amount of memory that needs to be serialized and deserialized, and minimizes the time that the serialization process takes, and it enables you full dynamic load balancing and redundancy in this model, and it's backed up by advisory tools which actually show you the serializability errors and warnings can say that this is not recommended for serialization and stuff like this, or this object, we don't know if it will be or will not be at runtime serialized to the database correctly. And it's backed up by integrated productivity tools that enables you to batch update groups of issues that you find after you understand that you want to solve it this way. For example, if you develop a new application, all the forms and all the user controls should be serializable, should be marked as serializable with the serializable attribute. So you need to bear this in mind, and then you will save some errors in the Serialization Explorer. So thank you very much. Now it's time for other questions if you have, and if you don't have, that's fine as well. But I sure encourage you to ask questions, because I think that it's a good time for me to answer you on serialization related questions. So I'm waiting. Questions, anyone? Okay, now I have a question. I have a few. Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you. Christopher. Okay, question from Christopher. Do you have an ETA, estimation time, I guess, on the RTM version? Oh, yeah. So Visual WebGui RC0 will be released in a few days. We are currently releasing this version to beta testers, and if any one of you would like to become a beta tester and get this early version, then we'll give it to you. And in a few days, we're releasing RC0. The RC0 will contain all the features that should be in 6.4. In terms of serializability, it will not contain the data grid view and the property grid. You will be able to do anything except for that, and in the very near future, it will take us a few weeks, and we will support the data grid and the property grid, which are very important controls. Mostly the data grid view. The property grid is a bit less because it's more used for administration and stuff like that, but the data grid view is very important. We're working on it, and it will be fully optimized and scalable by RC1. And RC1 is a few weeks away, I would say. Another question from Alejandro Sanchez. I sure hope that I pronounced correctly. Can you program more webinars? Oh yeah, of course. We would like to create more webinars. The 6.4 version series is actually over in the initial format that we announced it to actually to be. But we will create other webinars, and the first webinar that I can already tell you about is a webinar that I don't know the date for right now, but will be very soon, to show you guys the skinnable objects, the ability to create a few controls of the same type looking differently on the same application. So you can have a round button and a regular button on the same application, and a few other buttons. So this feature will create for it a webinar, and we are planning more webinars. Yes, of course. Okay, what other questions do I have about wrapping controls? Okay, so wrapping controls is sure something very important, but we do not think that we covered this issue completely in the core, and we concentrated on providing the full infrastructure of 6.4 before we support the wrapper thing. And I know it's the next thing in line. We know we should first solve the questions, the big and problematic and issues questions in the wrapping issue. We would like, I can tell you at this point, that we would like to wrap many controls in order to have more samples and to learn more about the different approaches of third-party vendors, because apparently what happens is there are some vendors that are acting differently, and we'll have to cover their concepts as well. So we would like to do the job ourselves without just an automatic wrapper. We would like to bring expose you to a new set of wrappers that are less, I would say, thorough and comprehensive, but will give you a lot of power to wrap other controls. And we will wrap for you as an open source project some few controls, but I can't say really when it will be available. But when it will be available, by the time it will be available, we will create a new webinar that talks about this wrapping. I see thank yous, so I thank you all for joining me today. If you have more questions, then I'll be happy to answer. But I thank you all for spending your time today with me in this presentation. And I hope that you guys enjoyed it and learned from it. So thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wait one more second, few seconds. If someone has to say anything, I'm still here. But those of you who want to go, okay, I have a question. Renata, if we have an application that uses web services to integrate with ERP, how do we solve the state server? Actually, it sounds solvable. I really don't know what ERP connection you're planning to have there, but those things tend to be serializable because it's kind of connection and authentication. And in addition, web services are mostly stateless. So if those web services are stateless, then there's no problem to have stateless application. Remember, Visual WebGui is kind of semi-stateless. It's not a real stateless application. It uses the state and the floating state server. But it still behaves like a stateless server in terms of not having to serialize the connection to the ERP and then reinitiating the connection through web services, which are essentially, most of them are stateless. So I don't believe you will have problem with state. And if you have state that you have to maintain somewhere, we can find solutions for that. We can either make sure that it will be serialized. We can check if the ERP connectors can make something serialized out of it. And if we're talking about Microsoft solutions, they all serialize, and even other solutions, even if they are based on Java or other platforms, they tend to give you some tokens to maintain your connection. So I guess we can find, even if you intend to keep the state on within the web server and to reconnect, there are solutions in 99.9% of the issues of the cases. I hope this answers your question. Sure, no problem. Okay. Other questions? Other questions? Do we have here? Thanks a lot. Okay, I see thank yous, and I again thank you all for being with me today, and I hope it was fruitful for you and you learned from it. Bye-bye, and see you on next webinar, hopefully very soon. Bye-bye.